I met Elise during my final semester at university. It was one of those cliché chance meetings you hear about in movies, raining, both of us ducking into the same bookstore cafe to get out of the weather. She stood near the entrance, shaking out her umbrella, trying not to get anyone wet. I offered her my spot in line. She smiled, thanked me, and said, "Only if you promise not to make fun of my order." That order turned out to be an espresso with a splash of oat milk and 3 pumps of hazelnut syrup. I didn't tease her. I just bought it for her. We spent the next hour sitting across from each other at a little round table meant for one. Her laugh was easy and loud, unself-conscious. She asked questions, real ones, and listened like she was absorbing each word I said. By the end of it, I felt like I knew her better than some of my classmates. We exchanged numbers. She texted me later that night. I waited exactly 10 minutes before replying, like an idiot trying to be cool. That was 13 years ago. I graduated a few months later, moved into a small apartment downtown, and Elise followed after completing her nursing degree. Those were the scrappy years, shared bills, cheap wine, and arguments over how to load the dishwasher. We made it work. We always made it work. I proposed on a Saturday afternoon, in our kitchen, while she was washing blueberries. Nothing fancy. No flash mobs or scavenger hunts. Just the ring I'd saved for her in an old sweatshirt, and me asking her to stay with me for the rest of our lives. She said yes without hesitation. I'll never forget the way she looked at me, like there was no one else in the world she wanted. We got married the following spring. Small ceremony. Just family, some close friends, Elisa's childhood pastor officiating. My brother, Drew, was my best man. He kept his speech short and funny, just like I asked. Elisa's mother cried through the entire ceremony. My dad shook Drew's hand like he was the one getting married. Everyone said it felt like the kind of wedding you remembered not for the extravagance but for how genuinely happy everyone seemed. And they were right. Life settled into a steady rhythm after that. Elise started working full-time at a private pediatric clinic. I dove headfirst into growing my digital marketing business. We rented a 2-bedroom place in the suburbs before eventually buying our first home, a modest, 3-bedroom colonial with peeling shutters and a front porch Elise immediately decorated with potted lavender. She loved that porch. Said it made her feel like we'd made it. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We were the kind of couple people described as solid. Elise baked on Sundays. I handled lawn care and car maintenance. We had game nights with friends, bi-weekly dinners with family, and annual camping trips that were equal parts nostalgic and mosquito-infested. On most days, life felt like something we had built together, something real and rooted. And I loved her. Still do, I suppose. Not with the firecracker thrill of that first bookstore cafe afternoon, but with the quiet loyalty that comes from years of shared grocery lists and inside jokes. She was my person. After we bought the house, it was as if Elise transformed. Not in a bad way, she just grew into herself. She painted the guest room a warm olive green and insisted on crown molding in the dining room even though we barely hosted. She said, "One day we will. Let's do it right." So I learned how to install crown molding. Badly, at first. But I learned. Elise always had a good eye for details. She could walk into a room and instantly know what needed to change, what small thing would make it feel like home. I was more about function. She was about feeling. We met in the middle, as we always did. It didn't take long before the house stopped feeling like a project and started feeling like ours. Every room held a memory. The scuff mark by the pantry door from when I tripped carrying groceries. The chip in the bathroom sink from when Elise dropped her hairdryer. The hallway where we slow danced on quiet nights when neither of us could sleep. It was our place, our history in drywall and baseboards. Career-wise, things really started taking off in our 3rd year of marriage. I landed 2 big clients back to back and finally had enough cash flow to hire a small team. Elise was proud, she always was. She came to my office opening with a tray of lemon bars and told everyone within earshot, "This man built this from nothing." She made it sound more impressive than it was, but I'll admit, her belief in me kept me going more than once. Her career blossomed, too. She was promoted to clinic coordinator and started running parent workshops in the evenings. I remember watching her prepare for her first one, note cards laid out on our coffee table, muttering under her breath as she practiced. She was nervous, but she crushed it. That night, after the workshop, she came home glowing, said one of the moms cried and hugged her afterward. "I think I actually helped," she told me. I told her I'd never been more proud. We didn't have kids. Not by design or by circumstance, it just hadn't happened yet. And it didn't weigh on us, at least not then. We were fulfilled in other ways. Weekends became sacred, pancake mornings, farmers market strolls, evenings with jazz playing low in the background while she read and I answered emails. Sometimes we wouldn't say much for hours, just exist quietly in the same room. It felt like intimacy. It felt like peace. Drew came by often, sometimes unannounced. He was the opposite of me, charismatic, spontaneous, the type of guy who could charm a table full of strangers without trying. Elise got along well with him, always had. I think she appreciated how different we were. He'd ruffle my hair like we were still kids and say something ridiculous like, "You sure you're the older brother?" Elise would laugh at that. She always laughed at Drew's jokes. But she laughed at mine too, and I never gave it a second thought. Looking back, I think our greatest achievement wasn't the house or the careers, it was the life we shaped around ordinary things. Elise used to say that routines are where love lives. Not grand gestures or surprise trips, but the small rituals, Sunday coffee on the porch, Wednesday night takeout from the same Thai place, folding laundry together while some show hummed in the background. We had our rhythms. I woke early, she slept in on weekends. She hated confrontation, I liked to talk things out. We disagreed sometimes, money, vacation plans, what color to paint the kitchen, but nothing serious. Never anything we couldn't smooth over before bed. We kept our promise to never go to sleep angry. I think we were proud of that. I worked more than I should have, especially as the company grew. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that I was building something that would eventually allow us more freedom. Elise never made me feel guilty. She understood the long nights, the early calls with clients in different time zones. But she also made sure we carved out space for each other. She'd leave handwritten notes in my laptop bag. Little reminders that I was still hers, even if I was buried under meetings. Our vacations weren't extravagant, but they were ours. A cabin in the mountains in October. A rental house near the coast where Elise could read on the porch for hours while I tried to cook seafood without burning it. I can still hear her laughing at my attempt to devein shrimp, as if I was disarming a bomb. Friends used to ask what our secret was. I never knew how to answer that without sounding smug. We didn't have a secret. We just liked each other. We showed up for each other. When Elise had a tough day at work, she'd call on the drive home, just to unload. I'd sit in the driveway with the phone to my ear, listening until she felt okay again. And when my business hit a rough patch, when we lost a major account and I had to lay off one of the first people I'd ever hired, she didn't say anything at first. She just made dinner, handed me a beer, and sat with me in silence. Then she asked, "What do you need from me?" That was Elise. She didn't fix things for me. She just stood beside me while I figured it out. That kind of partnership doesn't happen by accident. It's built. Brick by brick. Over years. We were doing well, by any measure. Financially stable. Emotionally grounded. Still intimate, still affectionate. I'd catch her looking at me across the room and smile, because it reminded me that somehow, she still saw me the way she did that first afternoon in the bookstore cafe. We were settled, yes, but not bored. Not stagnant. Elise had started dabbling in photography on the weekends, and I encouraged it. Bought her a camera that Christmas. She spent hours in the yard, taking pictures of birds and trees, chasing shadows across the porch. I loved seeing her with a new passion. If anyone had asked me then, I would have said this was it. This was the life I wanted. And we were living it. Finally hit its stride. We landed 2 national clients and I was able to promote one of my longest-serving employees to manage operations, giving me more flexibility. For the first time in years, I could actually unplug for an entire weekend and not worry that everything would collapse without me. Elise was thriving, too. She began showing her photographs at local art fairs and weekend markets. I'd tag along to help her set up, watching her beam as people paused to admire her work. She had a gift, not just the technical eye, but the way she captured warmth, light, those tiny glances people don't think anyone notices. She told me once, photography is just paying attention to things most people ignore. It felt like a philosophy for how she lived. We started talking more seriously about long-term plans. Travel, renovations, maybe even a second home someday. Elise wanted something near water, a lake house, perhaps. She said she dreamed of waking up to birdsong and mist off the water, sitting on the dock with a camera in one hand and coffee in the other. I told her we'd make it happen. That we'd find that place, even if it took time. We also talked about the idea of fostering. Not necessarily adopting, but opening our home to children in transition, even just temporarily. Elise had brought it up after attending a conference at work, and the idea stuck with both of us. We began researching it seriously, even met with a social worker once. Nothing came of it right away, we weren't in a rush, but the fact that we were having those conversations felt significant. Like we were growing into a different chapter, together. Our social life stayed small, by design. We had a few close friends we'd see regularly, but most nights were just the 2 of us. Elise had a few colleagues she got dinner with now and then, usually on Thursdays. I didn't ask for details, and she didn't offer many, but it was never a concern. I trusted her. That was the foundation of everything between us. We had our routines, our shows, our shared playlists. I knew which mug she preferred for tea. She knew when I needed silence without me saying a word. It wasn't flashy, but it felt like the kind of life people spend decades trying to build. And somehow, we'd already done it. Together. Sometimes I'd lie awake at night, not from stress, but from the stillness of it all. Elise would be curled beside me, her breathing steady. I'd stare at the ceiling and think, this is enough. More than enough. And it was. It started with the windows. We were eating dinner, Elise had made pan-seared halibut and roasted carrots, and I casually mentioned how it might be time to get the living room windows recaulked before winter. Elise didn't respond. I thought maybe she hadn't heard me, so I repeated it. Still nothing. She just kept cutting her fish, her face blank, not angry or upset, just absent. It was a small moment, but it stuck with me. She wasn't like that. Elise noticed everything. She remembered obscure dates from 10 years ago and picked up on the slightest change in my tone. For her to blank out over a mundane sentence felt, somehow, out of sync. I let it go. People get tired. Distracted. But a few days later, it happened again. I was reading in bed when she came out of the shower. Normally, she'd hum some tune under her breath as she dried her hair or sit beside me and pick at my book title, asking, another Stoic philosopher, or are we back to war history? That night, she barely looked at me. Just put on her lotion in silence, climbed into bed, turned away. I didn't take it personally at first. People go through phases. Maybe work was piling up or she was just feeling drained. But by the following week, the pattern had set in. She started spending more time in the guest room. At first, she said it was for editing photos in peace. The light hits just right in there around 3 p.m., she said once, without even glancing at me. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She showed me a few shots, children chasing bubbles, a dog mid-leap, a bee on a sunflower. The photos were beautiful, but there was something off about her expression as she showed them to me. Her eyes stayed on the screen too long. Like she was hiding behind the pixels. Then came the odd schedule changes. She picked up new photography clients on weekends, people she said found her through a local parenting forum. I was proud, honestly. Her little hobby turning into something real. I offered to help carry her gear to one of her Sunday shoots, and she looked at me like I'd suggested setting fire to the yard. No, it's fine, she said too quickly, her hand clutching the camera strap with a tension I didn't understand. It's easier alone. That was the first time I felt a faint, flickering confusion. Not suspicion. Not jealousy. Just a quiet mental note that something didn't add up. Elise had always wanted me involved in her passions. That she'd suddenly keep this one at arm's length felt foreign. The next week, I found her sitting in the garage, engine off, just staring ahead. Her phone in her lap, screen dark. I tapped the window gently. She jumped, then rolled it down, laughing nervously. I was just decompressing, she said. Long day. I didn't push. We all have strange days. But it didn't stop there. She started texting less, even when we were apart all day. Her replies became delayed, minimal. One-word answers, where there used to be long threads of inside jokes and emojis and check-ins. I still wasn't thinking anything terrible. Just that maybe something internal was going on. Maybe she was feeling lost, or slipping into some kind of rut. I even brought it up gently one night, offered to talk or even help her look into therapy. Elise kissed me lightly on the cheek and said, "You always want to fix things." And that was that. We were still sleeping in the same bed. Still eating dinner together most nights. Still smiling for pictures at a friend's engagement party. But something had tilted, just slightly, and I couldn't name it. A month later, I noticed Elise had started writing in a journal again. It was a leather-bound one, deep burgundy with a black elastic band. She hadn't journaled since our second year of marriage, said it made her feel too exposed, too focused on her own anxieties. But now she scribbled in it daily, often late at night in the guest room, door cracked just enough to see the edge of her shadow moving behind the light. I respected her privacy. I didn't ask about it. But I couldn't help wondering what was filling those pages, what thoughts she felt she couldn't share with me. Her schedule had shifted even more. She stopped telling me where her weekend shoots were, simply saying, out by the park or north of town. When I asked how it went, she'd smile vaguely. Tiring, she'd say. But good. Once, I pressed her, tiring because of the kids or the lighting. And she looked at me like I'd poked her with a stick. Just, everything, she muttered. Then she changed the subject. At home, she moved like she was performing. Every moment felt choreographed, efficient, pleasant, but distant. She laughed at the right moments, kissed me goodbye, asked how my day was, but none of it reached her eyes. It was like she was reading lines from a script she didn't believe in anymore. And then there was the phone. She'd never been secretive with it before, left it charging in the kitchen overnight, sometimes even forgot it when we went out. Now it was always with her. Face down. On silent. Once, while we were watching a movie, it buzzed and lit up. She picked it up fast, too fast, and excused herself to the bathroom. When she came back, she didn't mention it. I didn't ask. But my stomach was tight for the rest of the film. Still, I told myself I was overthinking. People go through phases. Elise was exhausted, distracted. Probably questioning her life in quiet, personal ways, the way we all do sometimes. I didn't want to project my fears onto her. I started planning a trip for us, just a long weekend away. Somewhere quiet. I thought a reset might help. When I brought it up, she smiled politely and said it sounded nice, but she didn't seem excited. Let's figure it out later, she said. Work's insane right now. She never brought it up again. One evening, I came home early from a meeting and found her sitting on the back patio, wine glass in hand, wrapped in her favorite old blanket. She looked startled to see me. You're home early, she said quickly, setting the glass down. Her journal was beside her on the table. I smiled. You okay? She nodded. Yeah. Just, clearing my head. I walked over, kissed the top of her head, and went inside to make tea. When I came back out, the journal was gone. It was such a small moment. A blink. But that was how it all felt now, small things quietly vanishing, replaced by silence. Elise had started disappearing into silences. Not in dramatic ways, no fights, no doors slammed, but in the kind of silence that fills a room even when someone's speaking. I'd talk to her from across the living room, and she'd answer after a few seconds too long, her voice light but absent. Sorry, I was in my head. I believed her, but I was also starting to wonder where exactly that head had gone. She began making more plans without me. Community events, gallery pop-ups, even a photo workshop she was helping run one Saturday. She said it was for local moms wanting to get into family photography. They're sweet, she told me, twirling her fork absent-mindedly over dinner. A little chaotic, but sweet. She didn't invite me to come along, though. Not even to help carry equipment. And when I asked how it went, her answers felt like copy-pasted lines. Good. Busy. You know, kids everywhere. She wasn't lying. But she wasn't talking either. One night, I came home to find all the lights in the house off except for the lamp in the guest room. Elise wasn't in bed. The door was half closed, and she was sitting on the floor, sorting through prints laid out like a deck of cards. Her camera bag was beside her, open but disorganized. Lenses turned the wrong way, memory cards scattered like loose change. I leaned against the doorframe. Late night? She looked up with a strained smile. I couldn't sleep. Thought I'd get ahead on sorting. I offered to make tea. She said no, already had some. There was an untouched mug beside her, still steaming. I didn't push. I just stood there for a moment, watching her hold a photo up to the light like she wasn't even really seeing it. Then she said, "Do you ever think we're too comfortable?" I paused. Comfortable's not always a bad thing. She didn't answer, just kept flipping through her photos. The next morning, I noticed she'd changed her phone background. It used to be a picture of us from our trip to Maine, her in a red scarf, laughing as I held the camera at arm's length. Now it was a black and white image of a tree-lined path. Moody, artistic. Distant. It was a tiny thing. A nothing thing. But it stayed with me. She also started leaving the house earlier. Not suspiciously so, just, early. Earlier than usual. I want to catch good light, she said once, brushing past me while adjusting her camera strap. Another time she said she had a consult with a potential client. A woman from a parenting group, she added, too casually. I never saw business cards. No invoice sheets. Just her camera, her keys, and a version of her that slipped out the door without quite looking at me. Nothing was wrong, not exactly. But nothing was right either. And maybe that's the worst place to be, not in crisis, not in heartbreak, but in the unnameable space where everything sounds normal, but nothing feels familiar. It was a Sunday. Late May. My mother had insisted on hosting a family dinner, but her arthritis had flared, so I offered to take over. Elise helped, though not in the usual way. She moved slower, like her body was present but her mind wasn't. She kept checking her phone in the pantry when she thought I wasn't looking. The table was set for 9. My parents, Elise and me, two of my cousins and their spouses, and, of course, my brother. He was late, as always, but showed up laughing, apologizing with a bottle of wine, hugging Elise longer than necessary. I didn't think much of it. Everyone was chatting. My dad was retelling a story we'd all heard before, something about getting locked out of his truck during a storm. Elise smiled, nodded, laughed on cue. She sat across from me, a linen napkin tucked neatly in her lap. Then it happened. She looked up, reached toward the salad bowl at the center of the table, and said, casually, "Honey, could you pass me the salad?" And both my brother and I reached for it at the same time. For a second, no one said anything. The silence wasn't long. It couldn't have been more than 2 or 3 seconds. But it stretched, unnatural and heavy. I looked up. My brother's hand was still on the bowl. Elisa's eyes flicked toward him. Then me. I laughed. A small, confused laugh. "Which one of us did you mean?" She froze. And then she said, "Does it matter?" The room went still. My cousin's fork clinked against her plate. My mother was halfway through a sip of wine, and she set the glass down slowly. I looked at Elise. "What does that mean?" She smiled. Not kindly. Not nervously. Just, cruelly. Like she'd been holding something in too long and finally, something inside her had cracked. "You're just now putting it together?" she asked, her voice light, but her tone sharp as glass. "God, how long did you think you could live in this little fantasy world and not notice what's been right in front of you?" My brother didn't say anything at first. Then he leaned back in his chair and let out a short, humorless laugh. He thought the Thursday nights were for book club, he muttered, to no one in particular. "You never even questioned it." "Elise," I said, standing now, my voice shaking, not from fear, but from confusion, from the sudden weight of something that didn't make sense yet. "What are you talking about?" She rolled her eyes. "It's exhausting, pretending with you. You don't see anything. You're just, there. Always working, always planning. Never seeing." I turned to my brother. "You're joking. This is some kind of sick joke." He didn't answer. Just looked down at his plate, like he was bored. And that was when I realized I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't hurt. I was just, numb. Because everything I thought was real had been ripped out from under me, in front of my family, no less, and they weren't even sorry. They were smug. Unashamed. Proud, even. And I understood, in that moment, that my life, our life, was already over. The silence after Elisa's words didn't last long. My mother gasped. Someone's chair scraped hard against the floor. I just stood there, staring at them, my wife, and my brother, like they were strangers in skin I used to know. I didn't say a word. I walked around the table, slowly, deliberately. Elise tensed when I got close, like she thought I might scream. But I didn't. I reached across her for the salad bowl, placed it gently back on the table, and turned to my brother. "You have 5 seconds to get out of my house," I said, my voice even, shaking only at the edges. He laughed again, like it was some kind of game. "Or what?" That's when the rage hit. Not the kind that burns hot and fast, but the kind that starts low in your gut, steady and deep, like a furnace opening beneath your ribs. I didn't raise a fist. I didn't need to. I grabbed his plate and flung it against the wall. The crash was deafening. Elise screamed, finally showing some emotion that wasn't contempt. "Get out." My brother stood, looked at my parents like they'd save him. My father didn't move. My mother's hand was over her mouth, tears in her eyes. "Elise," I said next, turning to her. "You too." She stood slowly, like she was waiting for me to say I was joking. But I wasn't. I walked to the front door, yanked it open, and pointed to the night beyond. You made your choices. Now live with them. They stood in the foyer, dumbstruck. She tried to say something, I don't know what, I didn't hear it. I slammed the door on both of them. The sound echoed in my bones. For a long minute, no one moved. I felt heat rising to my scalp, but my hands were steady. I turned back to my stunned family. I'm sorry you had to see that, I said. No one responded. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my office, the door locked, staring at old photos on my computer, weddings, birthdays, holidays, and felt them rot before my eyes. Every smile felt fake. Every glance between them, now loaded with meaning I had never seen. But I wouldn't crumble. I wouldn't cry. No. That's not what I felt. I felt resolve. Elise and my brother thought they could humiliate me in my own home, mock my trust, and walk out without consequence. They didn't know me. They had no idea what I was capable of. By morning, I was already making calls. I had connections. Friends in law, in business, in media. I had every message I'd ever received from Elise saved on a backup drive. I started pulling documents, her emails, work contracts, everything. Quietly. Methodically. The world they thought they owned. I was going to burn it down. Carefully. Legally. Permanently. She would lose her reputation. He would lose his career. They wouldn't see it coming, not until the floor beneath them gave way. And even then, they'd still underestimate me. I didn't sleep for 3 days. Not because of grief, but because I was consumed, wired with purpose. Everything that had been dormant in me, the patience, the precision, the clarity I usually poured into my work, I turned all of it toward Elise and my brother. First, the narrative. I told the truth to the people who mattered, our families, our mutual friends, Elise's colleagues, her mother. I didn't embellish. I didn't rant. I sent one email to each, tailored, clean, exact. I'm writing to share something difficult. Elise and my brother have been in a long-term affair. It came out at a family dinner in front of everyone. There was no apology. I don't ask you to take sides, I only ask that you know the truth. I didn't need to twist it. The facts were devastating enough. Half of them responded with shock and sympathy. A few tried to stay neutral. Some, particularly Elisa's cousins and 2 friends I never liked, tried to defend her, claiming it wasn't black and white. That told me everything I needed to know. Then I went further. I knew Elisa's clinic. I knew the terms of her employment, especially the part about personal conduct clauses. I knew she'd used work resources for her photography clients. The names she used to invoice. A shared password platform I had access to, still logged in from the laptop I bought her. Screenshots were taken. Statements compiled. One carefully worded letter to the clinic's director, marked confidential. I didn't need to lie. They called her in that week. Her resignation came 2 days later. My brother was easier. He ran a small digital branding firm, ironically, one that had only survived because I'd referred him clients in the early days. That stopped. I emailed every client I'd ever connected to him and explained, factually, why I no longer endorsed his services. A few didn't care. But enough did. Especially after one forwarded me screenshots of my brother mocking me in a group chat. I don't know who sent them. But once I had them, I sent them back, to each client. One by one. By the end of the month, his 2 biggest contracts were pulled. A quiet ripple. No noise. No public scandal. Just a slow, quiet death of credibility. Elise tried calling me. Once. I didn't answer. She emailed. I archived it without reading. When her sister called, I let it ring. I wasn't interested in conversation. Only closure. And revenge is a kind of closure, at least the kind I needed. I kept my dignity. I never raised my voice. I never made threats. I simply revealed who they were to the world they pretended to charm. The fallout was quiet, precise, and irreversible. They had each other now. Two selfish people clinging to whatever was left in the wake of what they'd destroyed. Let them build something in the rubble. I had no interest in watching. I wasn't broken. I was free. The house felt like a crime scene. I stopped sleeping in our bedroom. Couldn't even open the door. I moved into the guest room, the same one Elise had disappeared into so many nights, and slept on the too-firm mattress with the ticking clock on the nightstand, like it was counting down something. It felt fitting. Some of my friends drifted. I expected it. Scandal has gravity, and not everyone wants to get caught in the pull. But the ones who stayed, quiet, loyal, those are the ones who matter now. My father, after seeing it all unravel, told me he regretted not stepping in sooner. My mother didn't speak for a while. When she did, it was only to say, "I'm sorry, sweetheart," with a cracked voice and her hands wringing in her lap. My brother vanished from family gatherings. Elise, too. No one said they were banned. They just stopped showing up. Even people who hadn't chosen sides still felt the chill. It's hard to carve a turkey beside someone who watched your marriage burn and said nothing. I put the house up for sale. I didn't want to carry the weight of its memories, its hallways, its shadows, the dent in the drywall where I threw my phone the night everything came undone. A young couple bought it quickly. Newlyweds, I think. They were so excited. I shook their hands and wished them better luck. I moved into a smaller place closer to the edge of town. Nothing dramatic. Just clean walls, tall windows, and no history. I bought new sheets. New plates. A used leather couch that creaks when I sit down. Everything in it is mine. Touched only by me. People still ask what happened, quietly, curiously. I tell them the truth, but with less heat now. The rage has dulled. The fire served its purpose. What's left is colder, but clearer. Elise emailed again last month. Said she missed me. Said she wasn't sure what went wrong. I read that line 3 times and closed the message without replying. If she didn't know what went wrong, she never really knew me at all. As for my brother, last I heard, he'd moved across the state. Started some new venture. Maybe Elise went with him. Maybe she didn't. I stopped tracking the two of them a while ago. Watching people spiral isn't healing. It's just a slower form of self-destruction. Instead, I've focused on rebuilding. My business is steady. I've started volunteering at a local mentoring program, helping teenagers figure out what they want from life. I'm learning how to cook for one without feeling lonely. I'm taking long walks. I'm breathing deeper. There's still grief. Not for Elise, but for the man I was when I believed her. I liked that version of me. He was open. He was soft. I'm harder now. A little more deliberate. But I still believe in kindness. I still believe in truth. I still believe in love. I just understand now, love alone doesn't protect you from betrayal. But it can carry you out of its wreckage, if you let it. And I have. I made it out. I'm still here.